Hi, class. Today we're still in chapter one. We're looking at the early desert peoples. We are in North America, so we're going to be in the desert Southwest. And I'm going to start out by looking at this map right here. This small area right here shows the United States. And then this square right here, or actually rectangle right there, is this rectangle right here. So this shows what this enlarged area is right here. Then we can see that here's California, so we're about right here. This is Arizona, this is New Mexico, this is Colorado, and this is Utah. This is the Four Corners region. This is where all four of those states come together and touch. Okay, let's look at the legend. The Hohokam lands is right here in orange, and that's this area right here. And the Ancestral Pueblo lands is right here in yellow. Why this is important is because we need to get an idea of where these people are at as we're reading, where they are in relation to us. So again, we're about right here. So they're going to be over towards Arizona. So if you think of like the Grand Canyon area, and if you've been to Phoenix, Arizona, that's this area right in here. And again, in relation to the rest of the United States, we're right here. Okay, let's take a look at the text. Early desert peoples. The early American Indian groups of the Southwest developed in an environment different from the rainforest of Mexico and Central America. Yeah, think about that, guys. So in South America and Central America, they were in rainforest, which means, well, it rains a lot. Now all of a sudden we're jumping over to the desert. And in the desert, there's not a lot of water, is there? Okay, let's get back to the text. About AD 200, a group known as the Hohokam moved from a part of the Sonoran Desert in northern Mexico to present-day Arizona between the Salt River and the Gila River. At that time, the area received only about 3 inches of rain per year. Think about that, 3 inches of rain per year compared to the rainforest where it's raining all the time. That's where the Mayan and the Olmec used to be. Okay, yet the settlers discovered ways to turn the desert into fields of corn, beans, squash, and cotton. The Hohokam built a complex irrigation system to bring water to their fields. With simple tools such as sharpened sticks and stone blades, they dug shallow canals that stretched for hundreds of miles. Hohokam farmers used small gates to direct water from these canals into their fields. The Hohokam irrigation canals were built so well that some of them are still used today. Here's a picture of a modern irrigation canal, and it's not unlike what the original canals that the Hohokam would have developed. Basically, all it is it's a channel dug into the ground where water flows through. Then they would dig these side channels that would allow water to flow to where their crops were growing. And they would put in gates made of wood or stone or something basically to stop water from flowing from the main canal out to the irrigation ditch that flooded or fed water to their field. And then when they needed to water, they would lift the gate or remove the gate. Water would flow out from the main canal over to the field where then they would be able to water and grow their crops. So it's the same principle that we use today, and the Hohokam were using it a long time ago. Hohokam farmers lived in small villages. They built their houses by digging a shallow pit and covering it with a wooden frame roofed with plant material called thatch. Building underground helped to keep Hohokam houses cool during the day and warm at night. The Hohokam wove cotton into cloth for clothing. They made baskets and pottery for storage. Hohokam jewelry was crafted from turquoise mined in the desert and from shells. Shell jewelry was especially prized. Hohokam traders traveled long distances to trade cotton cloth and pottery for shells gathered by people on the Gulf Coast of California and the Pacific Coast. So, what they would do is they would trade with other tribes who were located in different regions. Let's take a look at this photograph here. It says the ancestral Pueblo built the Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde in what is now Colorado. Look at this. That is just awesome. They built it into the side of a cliff here. And we're going to take a look now at why they did that. So it starts out by saying the Ancestral Pueblo were another of the American Indian groups to settle in the deserts of the Southwest. They are also known as the Anasazi. About 8,700, the Ancestral Pueblo people settled in the Four Corners area where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet today. Like the Hohokam, the Ancestral Pueblo planted squash, corn, and beans. The high desert plateaus where they lived were not suited to the use of canals for irrigation, however. Instead, the Ancestral Pueblo developed a method called dry farming. They channeled rainwater and snowmelt into catch basins. Then this water was slowly released into narrow pebble-lined drains to the crops. So it's going to be very similar to the canals that we already saw. They just would stockpile that water as it came off from snowmelt and snowpacks. So they'd make their own small ponds to use as reservoirs. The Ancestral Pueblo are known as the first cliff dwellers. They lived in huge apartment-like dwellings built along the steep sides of cliffs, like the picture we just saw. Living in cliff dwellings, such as Mesa Verde, made it easier for the Ancestral Pueblo to defend themselves against enemies. These dwellings were made of finely carved stone and logs that were plastered with adobe. Adobe is a mixture of mud and straw that dries into a hard clay. An adobe house stays cool during the heat of the day and warm during the cold desert nights. Okay, so that's one of the primary reasons why they built in the cliffs. And it's right here. It made it easier for them to defend themselves against enemies. And if you think about it, if you are in a city up on a cliff, how is that enemy going to get to you except for maybe a small narrow path or really long ladders, which would frankly be easy to defend, right? If you only have one little path to defend, you're going to be pretty safe, as opposed to being in an open plain area where someone could walk up from any direction to your city or town. All right, everyone, go back and reread this chapter if you have any questions, and we'll see you soon.